Yeah.
Now, I think we are joined by the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Oh, well, it's in fact the Assistant Treasurer.
The Assistant Treasurer. He has
Get the promotion. Josh Frydenberg, apologies for underselling you. But thank you for joining us this afternoon from Sydney. We heard from Tony Abbott a short while ago, about half an hour or so ago. He has made it clear that he will be fighting against this motion, starting on, for the record, your position in all of this. What do you believe needs to happen?
Well, I stand strongly behind Tony Abbott and Julie Bishop in defeating this motion. As the Prime Minister said, my colleagues are entitled to move this spill motion, but I think it should be defeated, and I believe it will be defeated. You see, Labor's time in government was like a bad horror movie, and I'm not about to buy a ticket to that one. And that's what effectively we are doing if we go down the road that Labor went down, to chaos and dysfunction and leadership tensions. So we need to put the last few days behind us. This motion will be defeated, and hopefully we can get on with the job of governing for all Australians.
And how confident are you about what you just said there, that this motion will be defeated?
I'm very confident about that. There's been lots of talks between colleagues from around the country over the last few days, and there is strong support for the Prime Minister, for his Deputy Leader, but also with the path that they are taking us on. Look, there's no beating around the bush, David. We have had some troubles and we are behind in the polls. But the next election's over a year away. We can recalibrate the message. We've got an opportunity to reboot in the upcoming budget. And let's remember that the Liberal Party, in its long history, has never ever thrown out a sitting Prime Minister in their first term. And we shouldn't start now.
Now, can I ask you, because we've been talking about this, the PM said that he'd spoken to Julie Bishop and they stand together in trying to defeat this motion. Have you spoken to Julie Bishop, and what's your understanding of whether she wants Tony Abbott to stay as leader?
Look, I haven't spoken to Julie Bishop. The Prime Minister has done that, and I just heard the Prime Minister's comments like you did, and he made it very clear that both were opposed to this spill motion. And I think the vast majority of Cabinet, if not all other Cabinet members, are also opposed to this spill motion, because it just doesn't make sense, David, for the party to go down this path. We're a year plus away from the next election. Our opponents are the Labor Party. Our opponents should not be ourselves. And that is effectively what has transpired over the last few days. And I can understand the concern of some of my colleagues, but I also understand that we have a path and a plan for going forward, and we should unite, because if we don't, that challenge that we face of getting back in the polls, getting back in front, holding on to government, becomes that much more difficult.
Well, let me ask you about that path to turn things around, because that's obviously what many of your colleagues are worried about and don't see. You said the budget's an opportunity to reboot without, as Assistant Treasurer, going into the ins and outs of what the budget's going to be. What can you say to your colleagues about this path? What's going to change? What should give them confidence that the government, with Tony Abbott as Prime Minister, can turn things around?
Well, the key for us is to win the middle ground. That's where elections are won and lost, and certainly some of our budgetary measures were viewed as being unfair in some quarters. And so we need to better explain some of those policies. We need to go back and talk to key stakeholders, not surprise them, but also put forward a plan of action for repairing Labor's mess. Because we didn't create the huge debt and deficit. We didn't create the fact that we're spending $100 million a day more than we're taking in revenue, but it is our job to fix it, because if we don't, not only this generation but the next will be paying for it. So we need to do that in a responsible way, in a considered way, in a prudent way, but I'm very confident that we can. I'm also proud of what we've achieved over the first 18 months in office, and those initiatives, like the 3 free trade agreements, like the record spend on infrastructure, actually lays the groundwork and a framework for winning the public's support, and we'll continue to talk about the successes as well as the future.
And more specifically, it's David Lipson here, to win back that middle ground. What sort of policies need to change or be dumped? For example, should the government still be pushing the GP co-payment? Should the higher education reforms still be pushed?
Well, on the GP co-payment, Susan Lee has said that she's going to go and talk to key stakeholders about that. So I don't want to preempt where she'll finally end up on that or where the Cabinet will end up. On the higher education initiatives, the fact that they're supported by 38 out of the 39 universities, the fact that students don't pay back their HECS or their help loan until they earn over $50,000 a year, the fact that we need to stay ahead of the curve in having the best funded universities in our region, because education is always the first defence of the nation. I believe that the higher education reforms are important and we should continue to prosecute them. But one of the things the Prime Minister referred to in his press club speech was around childcare. And the fact is that a couple today, let's take a teacher and a shop assistant, a husband and a wife, together their income may be $115,000. Well, they're paying nearly a quarter of their take-home income on childcare fees if they have 2 children in childcare. That sort of situation is unsustainable over the long term, and it's unfair to families. And so that's why we're going to have a significant families package and childcare package. Small business, which is the engine room of the economy, more than 2 million small businesses. Labor gave us half a dozen small business ministers in as many years. We've had stability and certainty under Bruce Bilson. We've had deregulation. Now we're promising a tax cut for small business. You'll hear much more about that jobs package. I could go on. We'll be responding to the Murray inquiry with better superannuation proposals and a better system for our banks. We've got lots of plans, David.
Josh Frydenberg, Assistant Treasurer, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I want to bring in now the Finance